Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today as we look into another mystery, and for me, one that's very hard to understand, especially the position of one particular party. We'll get to all that. Of course, firefighters know that life or death can come down to a matter of seconds with their profession. But what about a firefighter who's on vacation? And a matter of seconds could have made all the difference and saved his own life. That's what we're talking about today as we look into the case of Elijah Snow. Let's go ahead and get started learning where this takes place. A very popular tourist destination, a place I've been to, and I'm sure many of you have as well, Cancun. Cancun is a city in southeast Mexico on the northeast coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Mexican state of Quintana Roo. It is a significant tourist destination in Mexico and the seat of the municipality of Benito Juarez. The city is on the Caribbean Sea and is one of Mexico's easternmost points. It's a place where a lot of people go for amazing memories, all-inclusive resorts, all-you-can drink, all-you-can-eat situations. How can something go wrong in a place like that? Unfortunately, we do see that in today's story. Over at WFAA.com, in July of 2021, Elijah B. Snow, 35 years old, was on vacation at a Cancun resort in Mexico when he died. Snow spent 8 years working for the city of Arlington and was promoted to be an apparatus operator in August. He was an outstanding firefighter as well as a dedicated public servant. His chief, Croson, said, "The fire department will take all necessary steps to ensure that Elijah's family is properly supported throughout this difficult time." This is a man that came from a family of firefighters. His father actually lost his life in the fire department while he was doing some training back in 1985. He's the first casualty in that particular city for the fire department. But Elijah followed in his father's footsteps, actually got to work in the same department, which was kind of his lifelong dream. Outside of that, even his stepfather retired from the fire department as well. Obviously, a family that is very big into public service and a family that you would hope other public services might look to support and make sure that, especially if justice was needed, it would be coming their way. Of course, we are talking about an international situation, so maybe that changes things up a little bit, but let's learn a little more. Snow was the son of a fallen Arlington firefighter, Ronnie Snow, who died in the line of duty in 1985. Per friend and Arlington Battalion Chief Jackie Parker, Snow was with his wife celebrating their 10-year anniversary. She called authorities, according to Parker, when he didn't return to their room after stopping by a resort bar before going to bed. Parker says Snow's body was found outside, near a resort hotel, and that the family is working with independent investigators to determine what happened. Part of the other thing that's hard to understand about this is he was at an all-inclusive resort. There is no reason for them to go off-site, and in particular, his wife would ask occasionally about wanting to do excursions, and he was always of the mind, we're paying to be at this particular place. It's safe for us to be on this all-inclusive resort. He didn't want to do things like that. They pretty much would go out here annually for their anniversary. So it was very well understood by his wife that if they go to this resort, they're going to stay on the resort. Somehow he's found on a neighboring resort. We'll get into more as we're going through the details here. Just to answer the question about his promotion, a fire apparatus operator is at the journey level and the highest classification in the firefighter series. I saw in some videos that I watched of his memorial services, other firefighters were talking about his recent promotion, and that it was really his dreams coming true. Under immediate supervision, they engage in firefighting and fire prevention activities while protecting life and property. Incumbents have the experience and knowledge to operate all fire apparatus, are qualified to instruct other firefighters, and act as supervisors in the absence of fire officers when assigned by department management. So obviously worked his way up only 8 years into his career path there to a very prestigious role within the fire department. But unfortunately, that would be the end of his career. Over at DallasNews.com, concerned family members said last week they believed Snow had been murdered Information and photos obtained for the family by an attorney in Mexico led them to believe that he had been beaten below the head and possibly suffocated. Now, I do want to point out that in looking at this story, there's a lot of media that came out around the time. There was kind of a big push in terms of media in the month of July on this story. And there was a lot of things that just weren't right. In the original reports, it was saying that he was found at a resort that was 10 miles away. I understand how that mix-up happened, but part of it happened because the authorities in Mexico would not release the location. They just basically wouldn't tell any of the members of the press, okay, this is where he was staying, this is where he passed away. That information would eventually come out, but the location where he passed away has a very similar name to another resort that is about 10 miles away. So I figure that it was probably just someone doing a Google search, picked the wrong result, and then we had that kick out. Now, of course, the media runs with that. Many of these articles that you would see if you go back to the original coverage on this highlight that, he goes missing from the resort he's staying at. He winds up dead at another resort that is 10 miles away. Not exactly what's going on here. And also part of the reason why I wanted to do kind of an update to this story. There's also a big recent development. There is new information, including mention of a video. Of course, on a resort, you'd think there should be tons of video. I think there probably is, but what is the family getting access to? We'll talk about that by the end of this as well. But one of the things I want to point out here is some of this early coverage also mentioned that they thought he was beaten below the head and possibly suffocated. We're going to see from some of the newer information that below the head thing, not really a consideration, not really true, actually. Back to the article, but in a written statement published online, the Attorney General's office for the state of Quintana Roo, where Cancun is located, said, quote, forensic experts have determined that Snow died by mechanical asphyxia due to thoracic abdominal compression. We got a lot to unpack there. Let's take a look real quick at an abstract from a paper that gives us a little bit of a better explanation here. In compression asphyxia, the respiration is prevented by external pressure on the body. It is usually due to external force compressing the trunk due to heavy weight over chest, abdomen, and is associated with internal injuries. To skip ahead a little bit in the story, essentially, his body is found in a cutout that some people call a window. His wife refers to as a hole in the wall, but it is a square cutout in a wall. And it's somewhere between 14 inches to 2 feet tall, as well as 14 inches to 2 feet wide. I'm really trying to get some better information on that, but it's a range that we're dealing with. Unfortunately, we'll eventually get to some photos. But in this abstract, it makes it sound like there's something external that is adding to the chest or abdomen, and the weight of that is stopping the breathing. The abstract then goes on to talk about a particular instance where they found someone that fell between a gap that was two static hard surfaces, and they were unable to get themselves out of it, and that caused them to expire with compression asphyxia. It seems like it's pretty rare that it happens in a situation like that, where there's some type of formed object. It just has to be extremely terrible chance that an occurrence like this happened. For that particular instance that they're talking about in this abstract, they're saying they've never found another record of this type of death happening, where it was someone falling into essentially a location where they were kind of caught between two hard surfaces. To think about the window is a bit interesting, because essentially you have half his body in, kind of half out, and we're talking about a firefighter. Like, firefighters entering windows, kind of something that they're trained for. How did that happen exactly? Outside of that, the family thinks it's murder due to some things that they're seeing. We're going to look at all that stuff too and see if you guys come to the same conclusion. Let's go ahead and continue with the article at thedallasnews.com. He was trapped in a window when trying to enter a bathroom, and due to the height of the window, he could not support his feet, and the upper part of his body got stuck. So he lost mobility since he couldn't reach a point of support to be able to free himself, the office wrote in Spanish. No signs of violence were found at the scene, the office said. Snow died on the couple's first night at the resort. Just terrible to think of. Thankfully, his children were not there. I think thankfully. It's such a terrible situation. They do have 2 young daughters. They decided that they were going to do this trip on their own. They went to an adults-only resort. but his wife essentially having to deal with this. Thankfully, she has family and friends that swing to the scene almost immediately. They get out there and start trying to figure out what's going on. In a couple of ways, they contribute very significantly, particularly her father-in-law, which we'll get to. After having a few drinks at the hotel lobby bar, Snow's wife, Jamie Snow, returned to their room while he stayed behind. She went searching for him after waking up at 4 a.m. and seeing that he hadn't come back. About 8:30 a.m., Jamie Snow was told that her husband had been found dead, possibly after a fall at a resort next door. This is another thing where I don't think this reporting is quite accurate. Basically, she starts telling the staff around 5 o'clock, hey, I can't find my husband. There's a problem. They say, well, keep an eye out. We're going to tell security about it. By 8:30 is when they're contacting law enforcement, essentially. She doesn't find out, I believe, until somewhere in like the 10 to 11 o'clock hour. Quote, he was our hero, the best dad and husband imaginable, and my absolute best friend. There wasn't anything he couldn't do, Jamie Snow wrote on Facebook. When his body does return to the U.S., a pretty amazing sight happens here. The fire crews at the airport actually get their cannons out and essentially make a water archway for the plane to come through. Just one of many tributes that happen around his body coming back to the U.S. and, of course, the memorial service. Elijah Snow's body came home to Dallas-Fort Worth. There are still many unanswered questions about what happened to the veteran Arlington firefighter. The Mexican Attorney General's office tweeted some information earlier saying Snow's body was found in a bathroom window at a hotel in the Benito Juarez district. Authorities said it is not the same hotel where Snow and his wife were staying at. It has remained unclear why Snow was at the hotel or how he got there. While Mexican authorities will determine if there was a crime, the U.S. Embassy in Mexico will help monitor the case. The FBI could also get involved, big condition here, if asked. So essentially, the FBI does have some resources in Mexico. They've got field offices in different parts of the world, but they can't just go and get involved in a case like this. They actually have to be invited in some way by the law enforcement that's investigating it. Typically, Mexican authorities would conduct an autopsy and the family could request a second one. Really big question. And with a case of this nature, where you've got potentially conflicting stories in terms of what caused his death, I would certainly be looking for that second one. But we've got a big consideration with that as well. The family is working with an independent investigator to get some answers, and if needed, Interpol, International Crime Police, could also get involved. But while the family searches for answers, they also prepare to say goodbye to a dedicated father, friend, and public servant. And they do wind up saying goodbye in late July. Family and friends gathered to remember a father, a friend, and a servant. Pictures of a smiling and happy Elijah Snow flashed across the screen at Rush Creek Church in Arlington. He was the life of the party, said Nick Zielinski, an Arlington firefighter. He was constantly smiling and poking fun of the guys. You knew if you were working with Elijah, it was going to be a good day because he loved being a firefighter, said Zielinski. One other thing I want to point out, I happen to have some friends that are firefighters, and also some of his friends pointed out this is a guy that would go out drinking with the boys. So, of course, we do have them going to an all-inclusive resort, all you can drink, all you can eat. They get there early in the morning. Their room isn't ready yet, but they go ahead and get started. They're having margaritas. They do eventually get into their room. They go out to dinner that night. They buy a bottle of sake that night at dinner. After that, they go out for more drinks, but I'm seeing kind of conflicting info on that too. They do stop at a martini bar, but according to what his wife says, I don't think they get a drink there. They actually wind up going to the lobby bar again, getting a drink there. And then they decide she's basically wiped out. For their day of travel, they had to get up at 2 a.m. to get to the airport. And then they just went to the resort and just started their party. So around, between 9 and 10, I guess, she decides that she wants to go to bed. He says, okay, I think I'm going to stay up and have another drink. The bars actually close at 11 due to COVID protocols that are happening at this time. So he's not going to be out there much longer, even if he is going to burn all that time. But we're going to learn later, seems like he changed his mind and he might have followed his wife, just literally footsteps behind her. As the family keeps asking for more information, for more answers, they're pretty much hearing the same story over and over. Officials in the Mexican state of Quintana Roo said Friday that Snow's body was discovered stuck in the bathroom window of a hotel in the Benito Juarez district. Prosecutors said that due to his height, Snow could not support his feet when the upper part of his body became trapped entering the window. The firefighter lost mobility and there's no point of support. Another question is, was he entering the window? Or was he trying to get out of the bathroom? And really, it's like a shower stall where this is happening. There's a window, very high up window in a shower stall. What would be the reason to want to get in there? I mean, it's not even the resort you're supposed to be in. The resort probably has bathrooms in the lobby. I don't know. Snow's family hired a local attorney who obtained crime scene photos. The family now believes that he was kidnapped and beaten before he was possibly suffocated. You're supposed to be safe there, said Randy Elledge, Snow's father-in-law. You're at a resort, all-inclusive, and have no intentions of leaving, so you'll be safe. And you're not safe there. So let's take a look at the location kind of from above. The place that we're staying at is this one, the Royalton Chic, Cancun. And right between it, this is the edge of the property. If this thing would stop, bring it up. There we go. This is the edge of the property line. And if you see on this side, we've got kind of a few parking lot sections, and then this kind of concrete section here. There are now tents over this. This looks a bit different. I think this is an older satellite image, but this is an outdoor theater area. And part of that outdoor theater kind of has a backstage or like an employee only bathroom. And that's the window that he's essentially found in. The question that I have right off the bat, and I've tried to look all over this map, I've tried to drop down to Street View, I just can't get a good indicator visually of what's going on here. I'm pretty sure there's some type of wall that's between these two resorts. Now, admittedly, for most of these beaches, you can go out to the beach. There's nothing to stop you from walking over into the next resort's area of beach. And then maybe from there, you could try to get back up and in. I would think some of these resorts might have security. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. For this particular resort they're staying at, they do have an RFID wristband that they use for purchasing all their drinks. I think it also lets them into their room. I don't know if it controls any access around the property. I'd be curious, because if they had a gate for you have to buzz this gate to be let out to the beach, then they would be able to kind of trace, okay, we could tell that he went through this particular gate. I don't know if they have that level of security to the beach access. But for him to get up to where this theater is, of course, if this wall isn't so high or if he could climb it for some reason, he could do that. We're talking about the middle of the night. We're talking about him being in the lobby of this building. Why is he going outside at all? Like, even if you did get to a door, wouldn't you say, oh, wait, I'm trying to get upstairs, or I'm trying to get to my room, or I'm trying to get to another bar? I don't know. I guess there's a possibility there if perhaps he was staying until the bar closed and then thinking, oh, I want to go get a drink. I want to keep this going. I'm going to go somewhere else. But of course, it's the COVID protocols that are shutting the bars down at that time. I think he would be aware of that. Would that be a reason for him to want to try to go next door, try to find another spot? Even if you're not going to see a hole in a wall in the ground and decide, okay, I'm going to crawl in there. That's where this bar is that I'm looking for. I mean, it's just not logical at all. With it being a bathroom, I think, of course, there's a big question of, did he need a bathroom for some reason? And then that's the window that he saw, and for some reason he was going to go in through the window. I'm even confused about that, because based on, there's only really one crime scene photo that I can find on this, and we'll look at that later. But based on that photo, I think all he could probably see was tile for the shower for most of the angle of that window. So finding that motivation of why he went out there is a really big question. And then, of course, that raises, I'm sure, for his friends and family, was it of his own accord? Was it his own intent that took him to that location? Or did something else happen to him? Did he go out on the beach? Was he mugged? Did people drag him from there over to this window and then use it as possibly a hiding place? Maybe that's where they wanted to dump his body. Certainly another thing we have to consider with this, but it kind of depends also on, the family's information, and in terms of that really looking like there is potentially some type of attack that happened. At foxsanantonio.com, His family insists that it was not an accident, as local authorities have claimed. It's unclear what his family is going to do next. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department issued a travel advisory on July 12th asking people to reconsider traveling to Mexico due to both increased cases of COVID-19 and violent crime. Continuing at Daily Mail, the couple were staying at the Royalton Chic Suites Cancun, a $392 a night all-inclusive resort, another guest who was staying there at the time confirmed. The person said that on the day Snow was found dead, she saw police crime scene tape at another resort that's right next to the Royalton, but was uncertain whether it was connected to his death. Obviously, we know it was. The resort must have something on video because cameras are all over the place, the source said. Now, hopefully, they all work. His wife was thinking the same thing. So essentially, she starts asking to see some video footage. She's getting pushback. She decides she's going to go around, and they take pictures of every place where they see a camera at the resort. Of course, they do sell dummy cameras as well, but you would think not all of them are dummies. Most of them, you would hope, are actually working. But then we've got that extra hoop of, okay, so they're working, they get something recorded, now having that released publicly when, quite honestly, for the longest time, it looked like the country didn't even want the name of the resort to come out in our media sources here. Very, very tricky. There's just all these hoops that it seems like this family is being forced to jump through. Mexican authorities have steadfastly refused to name the resort. Of course, we know what those names are at this point. And adding to the confusion, Snow's wife, Jamie Snow, was told that her husband had in fact died after falling over a wall. Now, keeping in mind, we're talking about a different language in this area. I'm wondering if we're having some translation issues, but based on what we're going to hear about some of the photos that the family has seen, it looks like there is bruises found on his body. It kind of would make sense to me, especially thinking that there might be some type of wall between those two resorts. Maybe there was some type of accident. Staff was afraid for that to come out, thinking it's going to hurt their resort, hurt tourists, activity in the area, possibly get them in trouble for some reason. And then they tried to hide him. I don't know. There's something about that, just knowing that early on, that was one of the explanations that she was told, that he died after falling over a wall. And that's not the only place where that comes up. Here at Daily Star, local officials in Quintana Roo said that he had died after appearing to fall between two walls at a neighboring resort, and he was lying trapped in the toilet window of a hotel. Authorities reportedly felt it was an accident without signs of violence. And here we have a beautiful picture of a beautiful family, and unfortunately, a moment from the past that won't come again for these two young girls or his wife. Texas firefighter Elijah Snow had a hard time saying no to his adorable young daughters, ages 6 and 5. He would let them put makeup on him, his wife Jamie Snow, 35, tells People. He would learn their gymnastics routines. He would make a fool out of himself. He would do anything just to see his family smile. As a matter of fact, when I started looking into this, I saw a picture of him, and it looked like his toes were painted in the picture. It was before I found this quote, and I think it probably was. Probably makes sense now that I know this about his personality. Initially, Elijah was terrified to become a girl dad, Jamie recalls, and then he embraced every second of it and was the absolute best girl dad. Being a father was a big, huge part of his life and something he was really proud of and really good at, she said. He always worked 2 jobs to make sure we had everything that we needed. Now, all Jamie and her girls have left are memories of the man who always let them know that he loved them. One of the reasons Elijah was able to spend so much time with the girls, a kindergartner and a first grader, is because of his schedule as a firefighter in Arlington, Texas. He would work for 24 hours straight, and then he would get the next 48 hours off. This helped his wife Jamie with her mom duties when she was at her full-time job as a special education director. The couple didn't have much in the way of life insurance, she says, so in addition to raising her 2 girls alone, she's trying to keep them afloat financially with one salary. It's been a very overwhelming and emotional roller coaster, she says. And of course, with him having so much time at home, he was able to take care of the girls. That's not the situation anymore. Thankfully, her parents and his parents, as well as some of their friends, stepping in. Some of them are picking up the kids from school, taking them to school, basically trying to give Jamie all of the support that she needs to keep that job going and to try to make this household continue on one salary. So who exactly found him? What does this window look like? Let's go ahead and continue with another article at the Daily Mail. He was found by a gardener who discovered the top half of his body protruding from a tiny window of a locked employee bathroom. Curious there that they're noting that the employee bathroom was locked. Knowing that it's kind of part of the backstage area of the theater, I don't know if there's like a hallway or if the door just directly faces outside. I kind of assume that it's just a door that probably faces outside. It's not in a secure area. So they lock that up at the end of the night. They had a show there that night. So he's arriving at this place a matter of hours after that facility is actually being used. Fortunately, especially in terms of thinking of respecting the family, the resort also has a show there the night that his body is found. His wife said in an interview with Dr. Phil that it was like, nothing stopped. Basically, the resorts just picked right up. The machine just kept turning. I think that's kind of sad, especially for this family. At least couldn't you have shut down that area for the night? And also in terms of the investigation, was the investigation really wrapped up to the point where the authorities could let them go ahead and use that facility again by that night? Daily Mail has obtained exclusive photos of the scene, including the 2-foot square window that remains cordoned off by yellow tape. Measurements of this window for me are kind of important. I'm really trying to figure it out. Basically, we have this source that's saying it's a 2-foot square window. We have the interview with Dr. Phil where his wife describes it as it's wide as the length of her arm from the elbow to the tip. Dr. Phil estimates that at 14 inches. I think it's a little bigger than that personally. I'll tell you why when we get to the photo. David Barcenas, general manager of the Sunset Royal Beach Club where Snow died, said he believes there was no crime and that the 35-year-old's death was nothing more than a freak accident involving a drunk man who snuck onto the property from a neighboring resort. But he still can't explain how the Texan wound up dangling from the window just 2 feet off of the ground. Yeah, the window is only 2 feet off the ground, behind an outdoor theater where guests had earlier gathered for a show. So this is kind of a shot of the theater area. You can see some of the tape for the kind of crime scene tape that has been set up here. And over here in the red circle, there's the window. Now just look at this location, first of all. Like, what's going to be your motivation for coming to this place? Let's assume that you've been drinking a lot, you're intoxicated. What is the draw to get you to come down here? You've got a bunch of sharp pipes. It looks practically like a construction zone back here. Why are you going to go back over there? You've got these big, beautiful resorts, and he just winds up. Now, let's flip it the other way. Let's say that you did something to someone and you wanted to hide them at one of these types of resorts. I bet there's not a ton of foot traffic back here. Here it is. Here's the window. So if they're accurate, if they're saying it's 2 feet from the ground, then it's definitely 2 feet. It's definitely a 2-foot square. The other thing is this paper here. If this is standard size paper, you know that it's usually, I think it's 8.5 by 11 inches or so. Could you stack 2 of those sheets of paper next to this? I think so. So pretty close to 2 feet square. Admittedly, there is this kind of inner ridge that might drop it another few inches. It looks pretty substantial. So that inner ridge, certainly a little bit tighter. But imagine, first of all, a firefighter, someone, I believe he's 5'9", 175 pounds, but muscle. It's described by his wife and his family, not an ounce of fat on him. This is a guy that would do CrossFit 5 times a week. What would stop him from pulling himself up out of this? There's a ledge here. You can see there's a ledge of at least a few inches as well that continues down here. If his shoulders were already out of this window, what's to stop him from pushing up on this bottom ledge here? All he'd have to do is push up on that and he'd be able to raise his body enough to get a knee there, and then he'd be out. Outside of that, you've got all this wall, all this surface for him to grab onto. I don't understand. Even if he was the right width to become completely stuck from left to right in this window frame, diagonally it's wider. So all he'd have to do is push up on one side. I don't understand, especially with a man with his experience, a man with his build, and a man of his size, how he winds up stuck in this. Outside of that, I don't understand the official conclusion, especially when we get to the family's information about what was found. Barcenas told Daily Mail, "We don't know how he arrived there. I think he was walking in from the beach. We think he was drunk. I don't know if he was climbing in, went backwards. We have the same questions everyone has." It's also interesting because pretty much everything that's coming from the officials' side, and the GM here is pretty much the only person that's going to talk in this case. They're all coming from this assumption that he was trying to get into that room. Why? What's the motivation? I think it was a tragic accident, but we can't see what the police see. Police have all the real information. That's according to the general manager there. Barcenas said it could have happened anytime after 10:30 p.m., which is 1 hour after Sunday night show ended, and the time that resort bars are required to shut under COVID curfew. That's when the stage bathroom, which contains a shower, would also have been locked for the night. Barcenas said the hotel has no video footage of the incident because there are no surveillance cameras out back. I'm not completely shocked by that. I mean, just looking at the locations that we're talking about here, you've basically, I mean, it might make sense to have some cameras between the two resorts, especially where the wall is. But essentially, that's all you've got back there. You've got a wall, and then you've got it leading right into that backstage area for the theater. I can see that they might not necessarily have a camera there. It's not super close to the beach. You're not expecting really the public to be accessing things back there. You might have people that are doing clothing changes and stuff like that for shows. You probably don't want a camera in that backstage area. It wasn't until after 7 a.m. that a gardener who was arriving for work looked over and discovered the head, arms, and upper torso sticking out the window and alerted security. His arms were out, dangling out, Barcenas said. So just to throw a little bit of math at this, I'm just really trying to understand this better. If it is a 2-foot square, the diagonal that I was talking about that would be wider would be 33, almost 34 inches. I do think we're losing a couple of inches on that square because of that inner frame, but still the diagonal, 28 inches. That's quite a bit. And this guy, I mean, while he's muscular, he's not huge. He's 5'9", and it's pretty lean muscle. Now, I can't find an exact width on an average chest. Men's chest size, of course, includes that size all the way around. The average on that is between 38 inches and 42 inches. So being kind of simplistic, basically, if you take that number and divide it by 2, that's kind of the width that we're looking at for the average chest size. So half of 38 would be 19, half of 42, obviously 21. If we're looking at clearance in there of about 28 inches, it really, if he just pushes up with one arm and gets to that diagonal cross section, I think he gets through it. And that's really part of what makes this hard to believe for the official story. Here's a picture of him without a shirt on. Like I said, you can tell he's lean, he's muscular, he's especially his upper arms. How does this guy get stuck in a window like that? I don't think it makes a lot of sense. Snow's stepfather said it's just so out of character for him to try to get into a bathroom he shouldn't be in. He just wouldn't do that. The only way he would do that is if he was in fear for his life and he knew that it was his last resort to try to get through there. Snow's family have said that unusual bruises were found on his body, and they're calling for a full investigation so they can gain closure. The other thing about the bruises is they have pictures of him from that day at the beach with his shirt off. So they can confirm that those bruises weren't there at that time. And then later on, he's got these bruises. Now, one thing that stuck out to me here that his stepfather said is the only way he would do that is if he was in fear for his life. And I was thinking, well, what if somehow he had gotten off the resort, He was stuck. He couldn't get back into the resort. I was actually in a situation kind of similar to this in my early 20s where someone I was with got stuck outside of the building we were staying in, and we didn't notice until the next morning. And he wound up having to try to keep himself warm because of how cold it got out there. He was going into a building that was under construction that had like a bunch of used mattresses and trying to keep himself warm in between the mattresses. Is this that type of situation? Was there some kind of weather emergency that would force him to try to find a location that maybe he could get into and stay for the night? No. Checking at Weather Underground, looking at the history of weather for that particular day, over that night, it does cool off, but it goes from basically around 81 degrees down to 75. It doesn't get lower than 75. And then for the next, the daytime, it just pops up. It's usually between 80 and 90 degrees. So it doesn't cool off where that would have been a particular threat. I don't think that is what he was doing, trying to get in there, because quite honestly, I don't believe that he was trying to get in there. So what is his wife going through around all this? Let's continue at people.com. At the local morgue where Jamie was taken to identify Elijah's lifeless body, an officer showed her Elijah's face on a computer screen, but refused to let her see his body or any photos. I told them I wanted to see him in person, she said. And they said absolutely not. I asked why, and they said it was because his death wasn't of natural causes. The hotel staffer who accompanied her to the morgue then typed the words, "Do you have money?" into her phone. Shocked, Jamie paid to see 4 photos of her husband at $100 each in cash. Can you believe going through this? Like being extorted for money when you're dealing with the fact that your husband has been found dead that day? I think we've all heard these types of stories about being in Mexico and if you're interacting with law enforcement. But if this doesn't squeeze your heart, I'm just in shock at this. For an additional $100, she was allowed to use her phone to take a picture of a police photo of Elijah's face. They wouldn't even give her photos or copies of the photo. They were just letting her see them. And then she wanted to take a picture of one. They charged her another $100. I wanted to know what in the world happened. And then when they didn't want to show me the rest of the pictures, I was angry. The homicide detective said that Elijah was found in a window and that everything appeared to look like there was no foul play. The detective then said Elijah's death would be labeled as a murder without suspect on his death certificate. Murder without suspect. It was already confusing because they were saying there's no foul play, but then it's a murder without suspect and he's in a window. Now, you might also be wondering about a phone. Did he have a cell phone on him? He didn't. Unfortunately, he forgot his cell phone in the car back at the airport at Dallas-Fort Worth. So they were just using her phone. He did not have his own phone with him. Now Jamie is forced to be a single mother to the couple's 2 young daughters, ages 6 and 5, and is still trying to figure out what happened to her husband. She's contacted the U.S. Embassy in Mexico, the U.S. Consulate in Mexico, the FBI, the U.S. Department of State, and multiple state officials in an effort to get help. She's even begging President Biden to involve the FBI, amassing signatures on an online petition. Of course, we've got that online petition in the description box down below. A GoFundMe, also started by Elijah's family to help Jamie and the girls, says that the family is asking for support to assist us with his family's needs, both present and future, as well as continuing with the investigation surrounding the circumstances of his death. I also saw some quotes from Jamie talking about that while she's at the police station going through all this with the photos, they have multiple funeral parlors that are pitching their services to her. She does pick one, and in my opinion, it seems like she picks a good one because she gets to view his body in private, and her and the family decide to do something that I think is very, very smart and might be our best shot at getting someone to notice this case, at least on the side of the Mexican officials. After being brought back to the morgue, Elijah's body was taken to a funeral home where the funeral director dressed Elijah up so that she and the others could say goodbye in a formal manner, says Jamie. She could barely get through it. I was extremely overwhelmed. I was still very shocked. I was crying. I was talking to him. I was hugging him. I was basically laying on the coffin. It was a lot. After the family said their goodbyes to Elijah, Jamie and her father-in-law went to a back room at the funeral home to examine Elijah's body. My father and I physically manipulated my husband's body to take pictures of his entire body, she says. We took pictures of every wound, every bruise, every gash, every inch of his body, so that we had documentation of what he looked like. Could you imagine this family having to go through that? I'm thankful they did. Like, I'm thankful they had the foresight and that they were recognizing, hey, look, what we're hearing from these investigators isn't right. We need to gather all the information that we can. And they found this opportunity to do it. She says she wasn't crying while she was taking the pictures. I was just apologizing, she said. Every time we touched him or moved him, I mean, it was awful. She says she couldn't believe what she saw. He had scratches on his arms. The two biggest bruises that didn't make sense to us with him being stuck in a window were the insides of his thighs. The bruises appeared to be shoe marks. They were very similar in size and shape to a male-sized shoe, almost like a work boot. In my mind, I concluded that somebody was stomping on his stomach, and that's how they got the bruising on his stomach, and they missed a few times and got the inside of his legs. That wasn't all. On his back, right at his shoulders, he had 4 circular-looking bruises that almost looked like someone was holding them down with a knee, or he was hit in the back with something circular. The back of his head, also covered in bruises. He had 2 gashes on his head, but one was fairly deep and had a cylindrical shape. The one on his forehead almost looked like a pipe or a bat or something of that nature. I'm not going to show the photos. Daily Mail does have copies of them. There's a link in the description box down below. I'll put it right at the top of the sources if you want to see them for yourself. The one that she's talking about that looks like a pipe or some type of wound like that to his forehead is really troubling. And I don't know how law enforcement would look at that and say, oh no, we're not seeing any signs of violence. No, he got stuck in a window. Like, it's kind of unbelievable. Same with the bruises on his back, and especially with the location of them. It could be that the compression from having someone kneel on you in that way, that could also probably wind up looking like asphyxia, compressional asphyxia. So I'm kind of concerned about that as well. But of course, we have authorities just pointing the other way with this case. It's really, really frustrating. You don't get that kind of bruising by climbing into a window, said his stepfather, a retired firefighter and trained EMT in Texas. I think he was beaten to death, and they tried to hide the body, dragged him back there, and stuffed him into the hole. We don't agree with Mexico's narrative that this was an accident. Our main goal now is to put pressure on Mexico to let the FBI come in because we don't trust them. Now, of course, with a case like this, I mentioned it earlier, really looking for an opportunity for a second autopsy. We don't get it in this story, and here's the reason why. Jamie decided to have the body cremated, saying that's what her husband wanted. They discussed transporting the body back to Texas for an independent autopsy, but authorities said that would delay the release another week. Essentially, you have to embalm the body before transporting it to another country. So they would have had to stay there another week. She would have had to stay in that country another week, stay away from her children. Quote, "We're trying to get out of Mexico," said her father-in-law, though they're now second-guessing that decision. Back at the Royalton, the family pleaded with staff to share surveillance video footage that they hoped would show Elijah Snow's movements that night, but the hotel refused to connect them with the Sunset for its surveillance. So basically, we're not even going to help you talk to the guys next door and see if they'll get some video surveillance on this. We're hoping some kind of video cameras can show us, did he leave with somebody? Just one video of him walking off by himself to that area or walking off with someone else will tell us a lot, the stepfather said. Mexican authorities gave the family his wallet, his driver's license, fire department ID, and concealed handgun license, but they have yet to return a rubber wedding band that he wears when he's traveling and the clothes that he was wearing. According to Jamie, he was also carrying, now here it says 100, in other instances I'm hearing a few $100s in his wallet, and the money was missing when police returned his wallet, which still contained his credit cards, the stepdad said. He believes his son, after stepping out of the Royalton onto the beach, got mugged, beaten to death, and then dumped. Did he just take a walk on the beach and 2 guys confronted him? Maybe they didn't mean to kill him, but they did. Maybe they were going to drag him in there to see if they could throw him in bushes, saw there's no place to hide him, and decided, let's stuff him in the hole. I don't think that's that far-fetched of a theory. Post-mortem photos shared by the family with Inside Edition showed Elijah suffering multiple large bruises and cuts to his back, legs, and head. His body does have signs of violence, said a pathologist, Dr. Judy Melinek, who examined the photos. If the chest and abdominal compression from the window doesn't match up with the bruises on the legs or the injury on the head, then we need another explanation for those injuries, she said. It's a short walk from the resort where the couple was staying and the hotel where Elijah's body was discovered. From the beach, the only way to continue is through a fenced-off, narrow passageway. To get through, he would have had to have scaled rocks and then climbed down to the window or walk through the Sunset Royal's front entrance. Now, if we're talking about the possibility that he was looking for another place that might still be serving drinks, there's a chance he could have gone through the front entrance. Knowing that there is a pathway from the beach makes some sense, but it does sound like it's a pretty rough path. I mean, essentially, he still winds up having to scale rocks in the middle of the night, looking for a restroom. Like, it's not making much sense. There is an update on the change.org petition as of April 2022, almost 9 months, and the Mexican government has only sent his family one video that shows Elijah and Jamie near the elevator lobby. So they did eventually get a video. We're going to get a better description of that video coming up. They continue to pick and choose still shots from videos that show them in the bar. If they have nothing to hide, why not send the videos also? A route that is theorized Elijah took to get to the location that he was found was provided by them. This route has numerous cameras along it that would give a clear evidence of what took place that evening. Once again, no videos were provided to support this hypothesis. The Mexican government has stated there will be no further investigation. The American politicians that did respond only sent letters to the FBI knowing that there was nothing they can do without Mexico inviting them to help. So you can tell the family is running out of options, but they're considering what other steps they can take, and he puts it pretty plainly here, which may include a lawsuit against the resorts. Well, we get to a few months later, and that's what we have happen. Almost a year ago, Arlington firefighter Elijah Snow and his wife, Jamie Snow, traveled to a Cancun resort. It would be the last time she spent with her husband alive. With little answered since then, Snow has filed a civil suit against the resort, Blue Diamond Hotels and Resorts, as well as RCM Hotel, Sunwing Travel Group, and the travel agency Let's Go on Vacay. The suit alleges multiple charges, including negligence and wrongful death in regards to the mysterious death of her husband, who was found dead at a theater close to the resort. The lawsuit filed now alleges the death to be more than just an accident. I think this is a really solid step because now you're going to have the management of all those organizations start to get involved in this in some way and start to look at, okay, what do we have? Because they're going to need it for their own legal discovery now that this thing's going to push to actual trials. But it also might get some of that management to start rolling. If this is a cover-up of some kind, you've probably got a few different levels to break through. This, at this point, is putting pressure right at the top. So hopefully some of that is going to force down and maybe break something loose. Or maybe in this legal discovery process, the family's lawyers are finally going to learn something else, some other critical piece that helps them understand better what's happening. Maybe there's a chance to still push this thing and get it properly investigated. Now, one interesting point they bring up here, this is language from the actual court paper documentation that was filed. Even more perplexing is that even though the hotel invested in RFID bracelets to charge alcoholic beverages to patrons and limit access to their hotel rooms, they failed to use that same technology to locate a missing and possibly dying person. Even more shocking is that during the delay, it's likely that Elijah was only yards away from Jamie, gasping his last breath. I looked into that a little bit, and the RFID bracelets, there's two ways that RFID works. If it's a bracelet that has a battery in it, it's called active RFID. Those can be traced for up to 100 meters. So if that was the type of bracelets they had, they did have a chance of using that as a location device. Most RFID bracelets, I think, that are used in the way they're describing, where they're basically just for buying drinks or opening a hotel room door, they're passive. Basically, they're not powered themselves. When you walk up to the item that is supposed to scan it, it supplies the power. Then the RFID kind of sends its signal back. In those cases, the range on them is only about 3 meters. So it really depends on the type of bracelets, if that could have been helpful or not. Of course, the lawsuit mentions the $100 per picture. Later, through an attorney, the suit states that Jamie Snow also had to give $300 in cash to officers for witness statements and crime scene photos, but was told that no surveillance footage existed. Many of the numerous security cameras located around the resort were not working, the suit added. Further, crime scene photos provided after his death showed Elijah's face to be covered with dirt and mud, as if he had been dragged. I'm seeing quotes from Jamie that says, according to the analysis, even if you're questioning the autopsy that was done in Mexico, that they did find dirt in his mouth, in his throat, and possibly even in his lungs. Additionally, the lawsuit states several of Elijah's personal items were missing, including several $100s from his wallet. The lawsuit is asking for more than $1 million in general, punitive, and exemplary damages for the wrongful death of Elijah Snow. Charges behind this include negligence on the part of the travel agency and hotel for failing to warn the Snows about the dangers of Cancun, and negligence by overserving beverages and failing to maintain secure areas of the hotel from outsiders, as well as failing to notify police in a timely manner. So they're going after all of it. Now, what about this video footage that we heard of? And when I started this video, I said that it was a matter of seconds. What was I talking about? Let's get to the description of the video footage that the family has seen. The resort has numerous surveillance cameras. Cameras are plainly visible at the entrances and exits of the hotel and throughout the common areas. However, it's once again noting many of those cameras weren't working. Months after Elijah's death, camera footage was obtained after multiple frustrating requests facilitated by the United States Consulate's office. Minutes after Jamie left the bar, video footage clearly shows Elijah entering the elevator that Jamie had just entered in an elevator carriage seconds before. The wording on that is tripping me up a little bit, but let's continue. It allegedly shows Elijah, who appears to be intoxicated, stumbling through the elevator bank, pressing the elevator call buttons. With no immediate response from the elevator, he then walks to the opposite end of the elevator bank and begins ascending a circular stairwell outside the front of the hotel. Ascending, I would take, that's going up. So how does he wind up next door? I have no idea. And here, that sentence is kind of double stating. Is it minutes after she left the bar or seconds? Because they're saying that he literally gets to the elevator and she was there literally seconds before. No other video footage of Elijah was found or provided to the Cancun Police Department, the Mexican Attorney General's office, the United States Consulate's office, or to his now widow, Jamie, the suit alleges. Nor was any footage provided showing Elijah leaving the property or walking through the lobby areas of the hotel. A subsequent autopsy performed by Mexican Directorate of Expert Services showed Elijah was already dead when Jamie started searching for him, placing his time of death at 5 a.m. that morning. Now, here at the Star-Telegram, we get a little bit of another explanation. I was just trying to ratchet down, like, how are we talking seconds here? Jamie had been waiting several moments for an empty elevator to arrive. From his vantage point, Elijah could see elevator doors just closing on the elevator car that his wife was in. From Jamie's vantage point, she couldn't see that Elijah was actually walking into the elevator bank just as those same doors close. So it sounds like they made this agreement that I'm going to stay down and have another drink. You go ahead and go up and go to bed. She goes over, hits the button. She's waiting a couple minutes for the elevator. It sounds like he probably sees that she's waiting, goes over and decides, okay, I'm not going to have another drink. I'll just go up to bed with my wife. But she gets in an elevator. He doesn't. He's hitting the buttons. It takes too long. He decides he's going to go up the stairs. All sounds relatively normal and gets us nowhere near the outcome of this story. The lawsuit filing continues with some stats about what's happening in terms of safety in Mexico. The family's saying that they were misled because they were told that Cancun was safer than areas like Paris, France, and Las Vegas, Nevada. Further investigation revealed that the local police department reported nearly 5,500 violent crimes in 2021, including nearly 4,000 assaults, 15 kidnappings, and about 1,500 murders. They're basically saying that, hey, look, if these vacation companies would have told us about what's going on there, we wouldn't have gone. They also noted that the location failed to post signs to warn guests that they were leaving the hotel premises, which is another kind of interesting point when you're thinking, maybe if you're stumbling around, had a few to drink, you're swinging through a door, if there's no post there that, hey, you're exiting the hotel, you're about to exit our property, that could certainly be an issue as well. Dallas News uses this story to kind of start a conversation about how cases like Elijah's need better international cooperation. Fortunately, they really don't have anything to suggest to help that. But they do point out some more stats here. The State Department keeps a database of American citizens who died from unnatural causes abroad. It shows 149 deaths in Mexico during 2020, more by far than any other country, and homicide being the most common cause of those deaths. But those are just the cases where a death is confirmed. Since 2006, 324 Americans have vanished in Mexico, according to information reported by the San Diego Union Tribune. And when that happens, justice is often forestalled by diplomatic relations. And I just want to point out, this isn't only Mexico. We've looked at other cases here on the channel of travel to different countries, a tragedy that happens, and a family that's stuck because they're expecting the same type of services that we get here in the US to apply in these other areas, and they just don't. Here it does also note, we should note that the number of Americans who die or disappear in Mexico is tiny compared to the millions who visit there and return safely. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that Mexican lives are even more at risk in their own country than American lives. While it's regrettable that 324 Americans have vanished in Mexico since 2006, the number of Mexicans who have disappeared in that time frame is a staggering 70,000. On average, 94 Mexicans were murdered every day last year. Mexico's murder rate is the 18th highest in the world, according to data compiled by Statista. I had read some articles on this case back at the time that this was going on, and quite honestly, I wasn't sure back then. It was before the photos were released. It was when the details were still in a state of a lot of things being misreported. And I just felt like maybe there was a chance that this was an accident. Someone that had too much to drink wound up in the wrong place in a situation that they couldn't get out of, and that was it. But after looking at this, after seeing the photos for myself, hearing the points that the family is raising, there's a lot that doesn't make sense. And one of the photos in particular came up on the Dr. Phil show. We haven't looked at that yet, so let's go ahead and bring that up on screen. So there's no source that was given for this photo. It is coming from the Dr. Phil show, but I mean the original source. I believe this is probably one of the crime scene photos that the family's attorney paid for and was able to get a hold of. And here we see his clothing is shredded. There is blood all over him. It's pretty clear that this body has been through some other trauma. This isn't just a guy getting stuck in a window. I don't know. I'm sure he was wearing a shirt. I don't know where his shirt is in this. We don't have a view of the other side. But once again, you do get a good sense of how far up he is into this window. His arms are already cleared through this. So if this was really a matter of, like, let's make the assumption that he, for some reason, got locked in this bathroom, was trying to find his way out. First of all, I don't think his clothing and his body is going to show all this kind of trauma, but let's assume that that was the case. He jumps up there. He's cleared the widest part of his body. It's already out there. He's got nothing but surface area to push on. He's got plenty of strength to push himself up. Outside of that, there's objects that are around here that you might be able to use as leverage for your foot. They're saying the whole point of their argument is that his feet had nothing that he could grip onto, and essentially that's how he got stuck in this place and couldn't get out. It looks to me like his leg is long enough to get back, or at least push on this wall, if not get to that knob. There's this hanger right here, something else that if you were on the inside looking to get out, you probably would have seen and thought about as, hey, I could potentially use that. If I can get high enough, get a foot on that, I'm clear. And then back to the point of the shower, it looks like this is the shower door. The shower door was probably opened for this photo. If he was outside looking in this window, what would he have seen that would have said, hey, come down into here? He would have looked down and just seen the inside of a shower. So not a lot making sense there. There's also this other theory that has been kind of spun towards the family that there's actually a cover for this window and that he might have popped it off using a crowbar. And it looks like law enforcement even took a picture of this bar. You can see they've got a measuring tape next to it. They've got a particular bar on the ground, which I don't know how you pick that particular bar because I've seen other photos of the ground at this area. And it's just, like I said, it looked like a construction zone. There's pieces of brick and broken things just laying all over this place. But for some reason, investigators picked up on this bar. And the story the family heard is they're saying that's what he used to pry off the cover that should have been covering this up. And you can see there's clearly a mark around this window where that cover does fit on there. Why would he have popped that off in the middle of the night? It really doesn't make much sense. What I'm wondering is, did they see the mark on his forehead, say, hey, look, any objects that look like they could have caused that, we need to catalog. And is that how this photo actually came into the police file? That's personally what I'm wondering, but obviously that's just conjecture. What can we do? What can we do to help the family at this point forward? The change.org petition is open. I have signed it. The family of Elijah Burnett Snow is asking that President Joe Biden request that the Mexican government allow the FBI to review and assist with the investigation into the death of Texas firefighter Elijah Snow. Please take a few moments. The link is in the description box down below. Please sign this change.org petition. And we've also got a GoFundMe. We know this family is now going into a lawsuit. We have a single mother having to raise two beautiful children. On behalf of myself and my supporters, thank you guys so much. We're making a donation to this GoFundMe today. If you would like to add to that donation, please see the link in the description box down below. Come on over and contribute some more to this family and their efforts to find justice and raise these two young girls. Of course, I can't make donations like this without your support. A big thank you to everyone over on Patreon, PayPal. Thank you guys so much. We have a few new patrons I want to give a quick shout out to. Thank you, Shauna Blackwood. Thank you, Kira McQueen. Of course, if you want to join, please visit lordenarts.com where you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even buy us a coffee like Ann Peters recently did. It's with your guys' help that we can keep this channel going, raise exposure to these cases, and make donations just like we're doing here today. What's going on with this case, Brain Scratchers? Is there anyone out there that thinks this is, as the Mexican authorities are saying, that this is just a misadventure, positional asphyxia, and it's as simple as that? Or do you feel like I do, and I feel pretty strongly after going through all this research, that there's more to this story, and we have a family that isn't getting the justice that they deserve? Let me know about it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for staying with us today. I know this is a long one, but I really appreciate your help and attention on this. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and join us again on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked right here on the Lorton Arts channel.